Hey, welcome back everybody, Dave Hardy here. Today I'm going to show you how to make a flavor-packed pork loin sandwich using an apple horseradish brine. It's going to have mushrooms, caramelized onions, spinach, and a homemade horsey sauce. But before we get into all that, I'm going to need to make a prepared horseradish. And you can pick up a fresh root like this at your grocery store in the produce section. You'll want to trim the ends, cut into more manageable pieces, and give it a nice peeling treatment to remove all the skin. Then dice it small and load it into your food processor. And you could use a food grater, but I don't recommend it without some serious face protection. When the cells of a horseradish are broken, it's a lot like cutting onions, times 1,000. Even with a food processor, you're going to want to be either in a ventilated area or outside. And don't try to breathe this stuff. Although it does make for a pretty good kitchen prank for that unsuspecting new guy. Hey new guy, what do you think this smells like? So if you like, you may choose to add water here to help blend this up. But I never found that step necessary, and for me, I want as much heat as I can get, so I certainly wouldn't want to water it down any. Now spoon this into a jar and let it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes to allow the heat time to bloom. Then add a pinch of salt and enough white distilled vinegar to make it saturated but not soupy. Now I prefer the natural flavors of white distilled vinegar for this, but apple cider vinegar or rice wine vinegar would work in a pinch. And for about 2 cups of horseradish, I used 1 cup of vinegar. It should still hold up on a spoon. And if you don't want to mess with this, you can opt out for the store-bought stuff and skip all of this. But I find that the stuff that you make at home is way more potent than what you can buy in the store. And now that the horseradish is out of the way, I can make the brine. Into a small pot goes 1 cup of apple cider, 2 tablespoons of kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 garlic cloves, 1 bay leaf, 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns, 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, 1/4 cup of prepared horseradish, and a few sprigs of fresh herbs. I use some parsley stems and a few pieces of fresh sage from my garden, but use whatever you have. And the last thing you'll need is 1 cup of ice water, but don't add that yet. Bring the mixture to a boil, stirring to dissolve the salt and sugar. Remove from heat and let steep for 10 minutes. Then add your ice water and stir to bring down the temperature of the brine so that it's cold when you add the pork. Now it's time for the meat. I use a whole pork loin, but I like to break it down first so it fits better in my fridge. First I'll cut off this fatter side. That's your sirloin end where it connects to the leg. I'm actually going to break it into 3 pieces. The other side is the rib end, and I'm cutting that off. But you don't have to do this step. You can just cut it in half and cook it as 2 separate pieces. I did it for no other reason except that I was hungry and I needed meat for stir fry. And that part has the most internal fat and is quite delicious. Now I'm left with 2 decent sized pieces that I can easily fit into gallon Ziploc bags. You might be able to fit both of these into 1 bag, although I decided to put each into its own bag to lessen the likelihood of spillage. Then I poured my cold brine over them, dividing the ingredients the best I could. It isn't crucial to be perfect here, as most of the ingredients have already steeped into the liquid by now. In fact, some people choose to strain it first, but I like to keep it in. It doesn't hurt. Zip these up and store them in the fridge for 12 to 24 hours. And if you decide to cut these into pork chops instead of going with a whole roast, you can leave these in the brine for as little as an hour. But I would still recommend at least 4 hours for that. Now these are going to have a lot of great flavor on the inside, but if I add a simple rub, it's going to add some complexity, which will make it even better. That rub will consist of 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, a half tablespoon of garlic powder, a half tablespoon of dry thyme, a teaspoon of mustard powder, 1 teaspoon of rubbed sage, and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne. Now pop on the lid and shake that baby up. Or just stir it, but it should look something like this. Okay, so it's the next day. My pork loins have brined beautifully. I mean, is there an ugly way to do it? I pull them out of the bag and dry them thoroughly with paper towels. Now if you want, you can just rinse these off and dry them, but I'd rather just wipe everything off with a paper towel because I don't particularly want to take the risk of clogging my disposal with all those peppercorns. But I don't really think there's enough salt in my brine to require rinsing. But either way, and to get a perfectly cooked slice from end to end, I always tie my pork loins. And for that you'll need some butcher's twine, which is just an oven-safe cotton string. To best demonstrate the knot you need, I'm going to use this rolling pin. A butcher's knot is nothing more than a slip knot that is secured with an extra knot. So first I make a slip knot. Go under the meat and put both pieces in your hand. Pinch them with your thumb and bring the cut end over. Now reach behind and take the string. And go down through the loop that you made. And to further simplify a slip knot, it's just an ordinary knot, around another part of the same string. Now if you tighten this down and tie a regular knot to secure it, you have a butcher's knot. Congratulations, moving on to the pork. Once you have the knot all nice and tight against the meat, you want to make a loop around your hand and bring it under the meat. Make sure it's evenly spaced how you want it, and then adjust it until it's tight. I know this is hard to see, so allow me to demo that twist again, because it's important. Take the string over your hand and twist. Good, now moving on. And keep doing that all the way down until you get to the end, where you'll flip it over, cut your string so that it's longer than your roast, and go back up, weaving around each string, making sure to keep it tight. When you get back to the beginning, flip it over again, loop it around that first string, and then tie a knot. Trim your ends, and you have an oven-ready roast. And since my board is already dirty here, I'm going to season it right here with my rub, getting full coverage. I then bring it over to a hot pan for a quick sear over medium heat. It doesn't need to be a super dark sear since it's going in the oven, so just a little color on all the sides is all you need. And be sure to add more oil as necessary so that the pan isn't dry. And that'll keep it searing all nice. And I like to sear the ends as well, but this will require holding it up for a bit. And once both pieces have some color on it, I'll put them on a roasting rack and into the oven set at 275 degrees Fahrenheit. This will cook for about 45 minutes until it hits an internal temperature of 140. So while that's cooking, I'm going to prepare the rest of the ingredients for my sandwich, starting with the horsey sauce. Into a medium bowl goes 3/4 of a cup of mayo, a 1/4 cup of horseradish, a 1/4 cup of sour cream, 1 tablespoon of minced fresh parsley, 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of Where's the Shower sauce, and 1/8 teaspoon of Tabasco or other hot sauce of your choice. And whisk away. And now set that aside. The rest of the stuff you could do at any time, in any order. For me personally, I like to have everything done ahead of time, so all I have to do is heat up the meat, warm everything up, and serve. Next is caramelized onion. Take 1 yellow onion, remove the ends, cut it in half, chop it lengthwise, and place it in a cold pan. Season with salt and pepper and a little oil, and cook over low heat, stirring occasionally to prevent any burnt pieces until they are soft with a lot of caramelization. Set aside. Now slice some mushrooms. Place that in a pan. Same pan is fine. Season and cook, adding more oil as necessary until they're cooked through. Last item is fresh baby spinach. Mine had these long stems that need to be removed. I do all of this ahead of time. Mise en place, just like in the restaurant. Now my pork is out of the oven, I let it rest for 15 minutes before cutting into it. Cut off the strings and slice it up. I like paper thin slices here, thin to win. It makes for better piles of meat on the sandwich. The flavor is nice on this. You can taste the horseradish, but it's subtle. And since it had adequate time to rest, the meat is very moist, but not leaking all over the cutting board. And for the bread, I want a nice soft hoagie roll. Cut it in half, but not all the way through. Open it up and scoop out some of the bread from the top side. This is pretty standard for large sandwiches like this, so that there's more room for all the stuff that we're about to pack in there. Now I'm going to put on some baby Swiss, 3 slices for full coverage. Pop that in the oven to melt the cheese. Meanwhile, I'll finish up on my vegetables. Into a hot pan, the same one I used before, goes some mushroom, some onion, and a decent amount of spinach. Remember, it's going to cook down, so you want a lot. Salt and pepper and a little bit of apple juice. Maybe a little bit more. Stir that around for a second just until the spinach is beginning to wilt. Then turn off the heat and it's time to build. First goes the veg. And any juice that's left over will get poured over top. Then a nice fat pile of roasted pork. And don't go light here. This is the main ingredient. Give it center stage. And to finish it, I'll give it a nice drizzle of horsey sauce. And that's all she wrote. And you don't have to make your sandwich exactly like mine. Let me know in the comments how you'd make yours. And if you enjoyed this or you'd like to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next week. But for now, I've got a sandwich to eat. Bye.